Better make up something quick. You're gonna burn, burn, burn at the wick. Ooh, barracuda. Oh, Oliver Stone there. Let's see if we can finagle. We have our finagler. Set your finaglers to maximum, people. There we go. Fuck it, let's do a fish tank too. Come on, NyQuil bottles. Thought you had my back. I know. No, wait, they're both full. And that's well, gonna be empty soon if that keeps up with it. Let's see here. Coins in the wrong place. This is a dirty table, I know. It's a dirty, dirty table. It likes it when you tell it that too. Tell it it's a dirty table. Alright. Table. I like it when I shove pennies. What? Oh yeah. So really they're gonna fuck me over on bandwidth, huh? Alright, fish, be very still. Oh. If you're wondering, that's a CRV sun visor in that bubble wrap right there. And by you, I mean the people that aren't watching right now. Just in case nobody's wondering. I always like to answer nobody's questions, in case nobody gets curious. I wouldn't want nobody to get curious. Speaking of curious, I think that was a curious oyster cracker. Well, it was just the shrimp dip from last night. Tasted like an oyster cracker. So maybe I figured out what the flavoring on oyster crackers is. It's shrimp dip, because I was eating regular crackers with that. So shrimp dip plus regular crackers equals oyster cracker burps. So apparently, in order to flavor an oyster cracker, they have a guy standing on the assembly line eating shrimp dip and burping on the crackers. It's perfectly logical. Poster child for the false human rights campaign. We just want the right to conquer you. Just remind me that thought.
Good Good morning. The Judiciary Committee will come to order, and without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. We welcome everyone to this morning's hearing on transparency and accountability, examining Google and its data collection, use, and filtering practices. Before I recognize myself and the ranking member for opening statements, I'd like to recognize our first witness, the Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy of California, for his statement. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Goodlatte, Chairman Goodlatte, for working with me
Wow.
to organize this hearing. I want to
This probably
thank
has an agenda.
Sundar Pichai for testifying on Capitol Hill. We appreciate and note your willingness to travel here and answer our questions. First, in a private setting in September, and now in a public setting. Google is one of the most valuable companies in America because of what it does. Google's search engine organizes the entire internet, and by extension, almost all the information in the world. This is hardly an exaggeration. Here's a statistic you will hear a lot today, but it bears repeating. According to the Wall Street Journal, 90% of all internet searches go through Google, between technology companies and the American people. For our country and economy to grow stronger, the American people must be able to have trust in the great companies
trust that
of the
you're
21st
evil.
century. We can alleviate some of their
Proven
concerns
it.
today with transparency and candor. I hope we can begin to restore trust in the technology companies that shape our world. We need answers. We need to know first that Google is committed to the free market ideals of competition and entrepreneurship that launched its revolutionary products to begin with. Second, we need to be sure that any political bias within Google's workforce is not creeping to its search products. Third, we need to know that Google is living up to
Your voice didn't crack on that
in
number.
free expression and human rights when it deals with foreign governments. Now, a word on the last subject. Right now, Google reportedly is developing a censored search engine for the Chinese Communist Party. It is also developing next-generation technology on Chinese soil and in conjunction with Chinese national champions like Tencent. Technology that the administration considers a national priority. Now, this news raises a troubling possibility that Google is being used to strengthen China's system of surveillance, repression, and control.
No.
Right this very second, China's authoritarian system detains more than 1 million religious minorities in re-education camps. Mr. Pichai, I urge you to reflect on that fact and on the promise your company made when it pulled out of the China market in 2010. And I applauded you for that move in 2010. Back then, Google promised it would not censor its search results in China or compromise its commitment to a free and open internet. Now, in light of these recent events, I think the American people deserve to know, has something changed? And if so, what? All of these topics, competition, censorship, bias, and others point to one fundamental question that demands the nation's attention. Are America's technology companies serving as instruments of freedom or instruments of control? Are they fulfilling the promise of the digital age? Are they advancing the cause of self-government? Or are they serving as instruments of manipulation, used by powerful interests and foreign governments to rob the people of their power, agency, and dignity? I believe we need to grapple with these questions together as a nation. Because a free world depends on a free internet. We need to know that Google is on the side of the free world, and that it will provide its services free of anti-competitive behavior, political bias, and censorship. I want to thank you again for being here and answering these questions. I look forward to listening to the answers with a very open mind.
I'd now like to invite Mr. Pichai to take his seat at the witness table.
First question. The fuck kind of name is it? Oh, if I don't like you, I'm gonna make fun of everything about you. Excuse the shit out of me.
Without objection,
Learned it in the
The
hood,
chair now
son.
recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Nadler, for a point of personal privilege to recognize a member of his staff. A very distinguished.
Speaking of names you gotta love.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to take a moment to recognize Danielle Brown, whose last week is tomorrow. Danielle has served on the Judiciary Committee Democratic staff for more than a decade, of roles, beginning as staff assistant and then going to counsel, parliamentarian, chief legislative counsel, and most recently, deputy chief counsel. Danielle has been essential to the operations of this committee. She has been involved in nearly every important piece of committee business over the last decade. Her interests and expertise range from protecting vulnerable immigrants to ensuring reproductive freedom and preserving vital consumer protections. She is leaving us now, unfortunately, to become general counsel and parliamentarian of the Ways and Means Committee. Our loss is surely their gain. I wish her well. I appreciate her wise counsel. I thank her for all of her years of service to this committee, and I hope the committee will join me in thanking her for her years of service to this committee.
Would the gentleman yield?
I will yield to the chairman.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I would like to join him in thanking Danielle for her service to this committee. She has worked with members on both sides of the aisle. She has worked with the majority staff very productively, very cooperatively on a great many issues that have made this committee not only more productive, but also operating in a fashion that has resulted in a number of bills getting from this committee all the way to the president's desk, whether that president be Barack Obama or Donald Trump. That's an accomplishment that this entire committee should be proud of, and Danielle should be proud that she's played an important part in doing that. And I thank you.
Yay, that chick.
I now recognize myself for an opening statement. In the United States, Google operates the preeminent internet search engine, the leading email service provider, and the Android operating system, which runs most of the smartphones in the United States. When a consumer performs an internet search, sends an email, or uses his or her smartphone, Google collects information on that person. In fact, almost every minute of every day, the Android operating system sends information about the exact location, temperature, barometric pressure, and speed of movement of every phone that runs on the Android operating system. With Americans carrying their smartphones all day, every day, Google is able to collect an amount of information about its users that would even make the NSA blush. Of course, when users click through the terms of service for these services, they do consent to such collection. I think it is fair to say that most Americans have no idea the sheer volume of detailed information that is collected. Today I hope to get answers on the extent of data collection and use.
Good luck with that.
In addition, decades ago, Congress passed the Communications Decency Act, including Section 230 of that act, which allows service providers to remove lewd, lascivious, excessively violent, or otherwise objectionable content from their platforms. This law allows service providers to remove illegal materials, including child pornography and content that is illegal under our intellectual property laws. While meant to allow them to block illegal, obscene, and harmful materials, there is some discretion that service providers, by necessity, must use to make decisions about what content is harmful or objectionable. Given Google's ubiquity in the search market, Google is often consumers' first and last stop when searching for information on the internet. As such, this committee is very interested in how Google makes decisions about what constitutes objectionable content that justifies filtering, and who at Google makes these decisions. Given the revelation that top executives at Google have discussed how the results of the 2016 elections do comply with Google's values, these questions have become all the more important. While it is true that Google is not a government entity, and so it does not have to comply with the First Amendment, the American people deserve to know what types of information they are not getting when they perform searches on the internet. market works best when information about products and services is readily available. And so today, on behalf of this committee and the American consumer, I hope to get answers from Mr. Pichai regarding who at Google makes the judgment calls on whether to filter or block objectionable content, and what metrics Google uses to make those decisions. I want to thank Google CEO for his willingness to testify today and to answer these and other questions. With respect to search results, algorithmic screening is the primary means through which Google sorts data and information. Google's search algorithm, for example, calculates what is presented to a user based on the variables
Oh, there's my cigarettes.
into the search bar. At its best, Google's algorithm reaches the best answer. Google search always favors one page over another. This kind of bias appears harmless. After all, the point of a search is to discriminate among multiple relevant sources to find the best answer. This process, however, turns much more sinister with allegations that Google manipulates its algorithm to favor the political party it likes.
That's an answer service. That's Ask.com or Ask Jeeves.
There are numerous allegations in the news.
Not a search urchin's place. Engine's place.
And have done it. The dangerous implications to a fair democratic process cannot be understated. One study performed by psychologist Robert Epstein has revealed that internet search rankings have a significant impact on consumer choices, mainly because users trust and choose higher ranked results more than lower ranked results. After performing 5 relevant double-blind randomized controlled experiments using a total of 4,556 undecided voters representing diverse demographic characteristics of the voting populations of the United States and India, the study revealed that biased search rankings can shift the voting preferences of undecided voters by 20% or more. The shift can be much higher in some demographic groups, and search ranking bias can be masked so that people show no awareness of the manipulation. The potential for this kind of bias is clearly problematic, and is further compounded by the fact that Google every day collects mountains of information about its users while they are actively engaged with a Google product, or even when they are not. According to a study conducted by Vanderbilt University, a dormant, stationary Android phone with Chrome active in the background communicated location information to Google 340 times during a 24-hour period, or at an average of 14 data communications per hour. The collection of location data may be obvious to most users. They are often unaware of the many Android supports, including an accelerometer, a barometer, and a photometer. These sensors, in addition to the cameras and microphone on a mobile device, can collate into a very accurate picture of where a user is, what they are doing, and who else is there. The shocking amount of information via its phone was recently featured on Good Morning America, which a reporter using an Android phone with no SIM card that wasn't connected to the internet discovered that the phone collected the device's movement, even identifying the mode of transportation, such as the subway or even a bicycle, and at times taking 10 sensor readings per minute. Moreover, Google's practice of reinforcing its dominance in light of allegations of self-serving bias creates little choice for consumers across the spectrum of internet-based products or services.
Preach it, brother.
Given that Google's ads show up on non-Google websites, and Google's search engine is being used as the default search tool on other products, such as the Apple phone, it is almost impossible to avoid Google altogether. Google is many things. It's one of the largest data collectors ever seen in human history. It's an advertiser that can get the right product to the right customer at precisely the right time. Google is also an internet giant, directing over 3.5 billion searches per day. With this massive authority, however, comes the potential for far-reaching abuse. The mere suspicion that Google manipulates its products and features for self-serving or even political purposes raises serious concerns about its business practices, its impact on free speech, in our democratic process, and Americans trust that the information gathered about them in their day-to-day lives is done with their knowledge and is not being used against them. My hope is that through our inquiries today, we will ensure more transparency and accountability going forward. Last, despite the nature and scope of today's hearing, Google is still the story of the American dream. The company was started by two individuals in a garage and grew to be one of the most successful companies in the world. 2 decades ago, we could not fathom instantaneous access
Sounds like
to
plagiarism
more
to me.
information than that which is contained in all the encyclopedias in the world. Now we take that for granted because of the innovative services Google provides. With that, I want to again thank our witness for his presence here today. I look forward to your testimony. It's now my
You
pleasure
invent
to
a personal
recognize
computer
the
in a
gentleman
garage.
from New York,
You don't invent
Mr.
a
Nadler,
fucking...
for his opening statement.
Thank you,
Boy,
Mr.
smoking
Chairman.
weed in the garage?
Mr. Chairman, our society has become increasingly reliant on social media and other online platforms to obtain, create, share, and sort information. This information helps us make decisions ranging in importance from where to make dinner reservations to which candidate to vote for in a presidential election. The public's increasing use of these platforms has generated many positive benefits for society, but it has also given rise to some troubling trends. Google is among the dominant firms in this field. As such, given the public's widespread use and reliance on its products and services, there are legitimate questions regarding the company's policies and practices, including with respect to content moderation and the protection of user privacy. But before we delve into these questions, I must first dispense with a completely illegitimate issue, which is the fantasy dreamed up by some conservatives that Google and other online platforms have an anti-conservative bias. As I've said repeatedly, no credible evidence supports this right-wing conspiracy theory. I have little doubt that my Republican colleagues will spend much of their time presenting a laundry list of anecdotes and out-of-context statements made by Google employees as supposed evidence of anti-conservative bias. But none of that will actually make it true. But this fact-free propaganda does help generate the mistrust that the majority leader referred to. And even if Google
Uh-huh.
Google were deliberately discriminating against conservative viewpoints, just as Fox News and Sinclair Broadcasting and conservative talk radio hosts like Rush Limbaugh discriminate against liberal points of view, that would be its right as a private
Really? No, it wouldn't.
company to do so, not to be questioned by government.
Are you fucking serious?
During the Reagan administration,
They're a
5
monopoly.
years ago, the Federal Communications Commissioners appointed by Ronald Reagan abolished what we used to have called the Fairness Doctrine, which placed an obligation on broadcasters who use the public airwaves to be fair to different points of view. This question might be relevant if the Republican members wanted to bring back the Fairness Doctrine and expand its scope to social media companies. I doubt we will see any interest in doing so. But we should not let the delusions of the far right distract us from the real issues that should be the focus of today's hearing. For example, we should examine what Google is doing to stop hostile foreign powers from using its platform to spread false information in order to harm our political discourse. It has been more than 2 years since the 2016 election, yet this committee has not held a single hearing focused on Russia's campaign to manipulate online platforms to undermine American democracy,
Here.
despite the fact that it is the consensus view of our intelligence agencies that Russia engaged in a massive disinformation campaign to influence the 2016 election. I hope that Mr. Pichai can tell us what actions Google has taken to counter this unprecedented attack and what gaps remain in its defenses without being so specific as to give a guidance to foreign powers. This may help Congress determine what more can be done to further insulate our democratic processes from foreign interference.
Yeah, you gotta pay for that
We
shit.
should also examine how Google enforces community standards that prohibit racist or bigoted threats and other inappropriate conduct. While internet platforms have produced many societal benefits, they have also provided a new tool for those seeking to stoke racial and ethnic hatred. The presence of hateful conduct and content on these platforms has been made all the more alarming by the recent rise in hate-motivated violence. According to statistics recently released by the FBI, reported incidents of hate crimes rose by 17% last year compared to 2016, marking the third consecutive year that such reports have increased. The horrible massacre at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, the recent murder of an African-American couple in a Kentucky grocery store, the killing of an Indian engineer last year in Kansas are sadly not isolated outbursts of violence, but the most salient examples of a troubling trend. We should consider to what extent Google and other online platforms may have been used to foment and to disseminate such hatred, and how these platforms can play a constructive role in combating its spread. As the dominant player in its field, Google possesses significant market power. It is also useful to examine its policies and practices to ensure that other companies are able to compete in an open and fair marketplace. There are also concerns about the prevalence of pirated material available on Google and other internet platforms at the expense of legitimate content. Finally, it is important to know what Google is doing to protect its users' data privacy and data security. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that Google discovered last March that a bug in its social media platform Google Plus had exposed the private profile data of up to 500,000 users to third-party developers, but opted not to disclose the issue publicly, not even to those who may have been affected at the time. And just yesterday, the company announced that it had discovered another Google Plus bug that may have exposed the private profile data of millions of users. While Google has so far found no evidence that developers have in fact abused these bugs, or that any user profile data has been misused in any way, incidents like this still raise legitimate questions about what types of data exposures a company is obligated to disclose publicly. It also raises questions about how much control users should have over their own data and how such control should be regulated. I am also disturbed by recent reports that Google is developing a search engine for the Chinese mainland market. According to these reports, this search engine would not only accommodate Chinese government censors, it might allow the Chinese government to track individuals by linking search terms to the user's mobile phone number. Unfortunately, in this, our fourth hearing devoted to entirely fictitious allegations of anti-conservative bias by internet companies, we will waste more time and more taxpayer money in elevating well-worn right-wing conspiracy theories instead of concentrating on the substantive questions and issues that should be the focus of our hearings. Our committee can and must and will do better. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Nadler. We welcome our distinguished witness, and if you would please rise, I'll begin by swearing you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony that you are about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Let the record show that the witness answered in the affirmative. Our only witness today is Mr. Sundar Pichai. Pichai is the Chief Executive Officer of Google. Your written statement will be entered into the record in its entirety, and we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. To help you stay within that time, there's a timing light on your table. When the light switches from green to yellow, you have 1 minute to conclude your testimony. When the light turns red, it signals your 5 minutes have expired. Mr. Pichai, you are very welcome, and you may begin.
Chairman Goodluck, Ranking Member Nadler, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I joined Google 15 years ago and have been privileged to serve as CEO for the past 3 years. But my love for information and technology began long before that. It's been 25 years since I made the US my home. Growing up in India, I have distinct memories of when my family got its first phone and its first television. Each new technology made a profound difference in our lives. Getting the phone meant I could call ahead to the hospital to check that the blood results were in instead of taking a 2-hour trip there. And the television, well, it only had one channel, but I couldn't have been more thrilled by its arrival. Those experiences made me a technology optimist, and I remain one today. Not only because I believe in technology, but because I believe in people and their ability to use technology to improve their lives. I'm incredibly proud of what Google does to empower people around the world, especially here in the US. I'd like to take a moment to share a bit of background on that. 20 years ago, two students, one from Michigan and one from Maryland, came together at Stanford with a big idea: to provide users with access to the world's information. That mission still drives everything we do, whether that's saving you a few minutes on your morning commute or helping doctors detect disease and save lives. Today, Google is more than a search engine. We are a global company that's committed to building products for everyone. That means working with many industries, from education and healthcare to manufacturing and entertainment. Even as we expand into new markets, we never forget our American roots. It's no coincidence that a company dedicated to free flow of information was founded right here in the US. As an American company, we cherish the values and freedoms that have allowed us to grow and serve so many users. I'm proud to say we do, and we will continue to work with the government to keep our country safe and secure. Over the years, our footprint has expanded far beyond California to states such as Texas, Virginia, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Today in the US, we are growing faster outside of the Bay Area than within it. I've had the great opportunity to travel across the country and see all the places that are powering our digital economy, from Clarksville to Pittsburgh to San Diego, where we recently launched a partnership with the USO to help veterans and military families. Along the way, I met many people who depend on Google to learn new skills, find jobs, or new businesses. Over the past year, we have supported more than 1.5 million American businesses. And over the past 3 years, we have made direct contributions of $150 billion to the US economy, added more than 24,000 employees, and paid over $43 billion to our US partners across Search, YouTube, and Android. These investments strengthen our communities and support thousands of American jobs. They also allow us to provide great services to our users to help them through the day. It's an honor to play this role in people's lives. It's one we know comes with great responsibility. Protecting the privacy and security of our users has long been an essential part of our mission. We've invested an enormous amount of work over the years to bring choice, transparency, and control to our users. These values are built into every product we make. We recognize the important role of governments, including this committee, in setting rules for the development and use of technology. To that end, we support federal privacy legislation and proposed a legislative framework for privacy earlier this year. Users look to us to provide accurate, trusted information, and we work hard to ensure the integrity of our products. We have put a number of checks and balances in place to ensure they continue
Howdy.
to live up to our standards. I lead this company without political bias and work to ensure that our products continue to operate that way. To do otherwise would be against our core principles and our business interests. We are a company that provides platforms for diverse perspectives and opinions, and there is no shortage of them amongst our employees. Some Googlers are former servicemen and women who have risked much in defense of their country. Some are civil libertarians who fiercely defend freedom of expression. Some are parents who worry about the role technology plays in our households. Some, like me, are immigrants who are profoundly grateful to the freedoms and opportunities it offers. And some of us are many of these things. Let me close by saying that leading Google has been the
Immigrant
greatest
soldiers?
professional
Yeah.
honor of my life. It's a challenging moment for our industry, but I'm privileged to be here. I greatly appreciate you letting me share the story of Google and our work to build products worthy of the trust users place in us. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. We'll now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions, and I'll begin by recognizing myself.
Yay, 5-minute
Mr.
rule.
Pichai,
I love
the Android operating system
What?
sends Google information every few minutes, detailing the exact location of a smartphone within a few feet, the speed of movement of the phone, the altitude of the phone,
No,
sufficient to
within a few
determine what
toes.
floor of a building the phone is on, the temperature surrounding the phone, and other readings. And if so, with Americans carrying their phones with them virtually at all times, doesn't the collection of this volume of detailed information really mean that Google is compiling information about virtually every movement an individual with a smartphone is making every hour of every day?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. Today, for any service we provide our users, we go to great lengths
We
to
only do
protect
that
their
if you're a
privacy.
threat to Russia.
We give them transparency, choice, and control. Android is a powerful platform and provides smartphone for over 2 billion people.
Answer the
And
fucking
as part of
question,
that,
man. Jesus
it depends on the
Christ.
applications users choose to use. If you're using a fitness application, which is detecting the number of steps you walk, you expect it to send that information. But it's a choice users make. We make it clear, and it depends on the use cases.
So the answer to my question, my first question is yes. Is that correct? That the information that I cited is gathered by Google?
If the
No, he wanted to
Google
imply
services,
something else
you have a
by
choice
not
of what
answering
information
it.
is collected, and we make it transparent.
I understand there are uses that
Uh-huh.
consumers make use of. I use it to keep track of the number of steps I
Uh-huh.
walk. I understand.
Yeah, and he
that's
just
a service
sidestepped
that
the question.
One of your competitors provides, so I understand that purpose. But do you think the average consumer understands that Google will collect this volume of detailed information when they click through the terms of service agreements in order to use the Android operating system?
It's really important for us that that average users are able to understand it. This is why we do something called privacy
I
checkup.
think average users read the terms of service and the updates that are very frequently sent to us.
Uh-huh.
Beyond the terms of service, we remind users to do a privacy checkup, and we make it very obvious every month. In fact, in the last 28 days, 160 million users went to their My Account settings, where they can clearly see what information we have. We actually show it back to them, and we give clear toggles by category where they can decide whether that information is collected,
And then
stored,
you change your
or
terms of
more
service,
importantly,
and then you
we
change our
decide to
fucking
stop using
choices.
it. We work hard to make it possible for users to take their data with them if they choose to use another service.
Should be the
Let me
same way
switch
when we
to,
fucking set our accounts
the
up.
issue of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. You heard me say in my opening statement that this provides broad liability protections for you and other technology companies for good faith restrictions that when Google thinks something is obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable. On the other hand, objectionable material, by whatever standard applied, likely elicits the most engagement from users on your site. And for Google, increased engagement potentially means increased revenue. However, it is important for Google to make very clear where it draws the line, and I don't believe Google has done its best to make that clear. So what I would ask is the following. Would Google or YouTube be willing to make changes in support of a healthier civic dialogue if doing so meant a drop in user engagement metrics?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. We have a long track record of, we have always focused on long-term goals towards user satisfaction. We focus on their knowledge, happiness, success, and that's what we work hard to create. It is
Sexes?
important to us that platforms like YouTube are viable over the long run. It's in our natural incentive to do so. YouTube is a place where users, advertisers, and content creators who make their livelihoods use the platform. And so we want to make this work in a sustainable way.
When it comes to political advertising, as you know, some of your competitors in other advertising media are required by law to offer the same rate, the lowest rate, as a matter of fact, to all political candidates. So, for example, that's true in television and radio. Would Google, should competing political candidates be charged the same effective ad rates to reach prospective voters?
Our advertising products are built without any bias, and the rates are competitive, set by a live auction process. So depending on the keywords for which you're bidding for, depending on the demand there is in the auction, the prices are automatically calculated. So the system decides that based on
Understand
supply
it's
and demand.
automatically calculated.
It's
but
how we
two
launder
competing
money for the
political candidates
Russians.
Targeting the same audience, see different ad rates, and if yes, could that disparity be substantial?
There wouldn't be a difference based on any political reasons unless there are keywords which are of particular interest and the market determines it. So it's essentially a supply-demand equilibrium. It can lead to difference in rates, but it will vary from time to time.
Can those rates be very substantial in difference?
There could be occasions where, yes, there could be a difference in rates. Yeah, I haven't looked at the specifics of it yet.
So the result is different than in other markets like television or radio, where every candidate is entitled to the lowest rate that television station or radio station offers to any political candidate for office.
There could be variations based on the time of the day, the keywords you're choosing to go for, the geographies you're advertising in. But it's decided by the system, and it's a process we have done for over 20 years. And let me assure you, anything to do with our civic process, we make sure we do so in a nonpartisan way, and it's really important for us.
Thank you. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Nadler, for 5 minutes.
Equally divisive
Thank you,
away.
Mr. Pichai. According to media reports, Google found evidence that, well, let me go to the other one first. Google found a bug in its Google Plus social media platform that could potentially expose the private data of up to 500,000 users without the consent of third-party developers. Google, however, did not disclose this bug until months later after it was revealed by a report in the Wall Street Journal. Yesterday, as I mentioned before, you announced another bug. What legal obligations is the company under to disclose
Yeah, I know somebody
data
was talking about
exposures that do not
third-party
involve
developers
sensitive
recently.
financial information, but still involve private
Oh
personal
yeah, that was
data,
me.
like a user's name, age, email address, or phone number?
Congressman, we take privacy seriously. The bugs you mentioned are bugs. We found them by either doing an audit or using our automated testing systems. Whenever we find any bugs, we follow. It gets escalated to our privacy and data protection office, and we comply with.
All right, I'm not criticizing what you do. I'm asking what legal obligation is the company under to disclose such data exposures that don't involve financial information, but still involve other personal information.
It depends on the situation. We follow the requirements, and in that case, in the first case, typically we look at our legal requirements, but we go above and beyond to make sure we do the right thing for our users. In the first case, there was no evidence data was misused, and we couldn't accurately
I understand all that, but my question is, what legal obligations are there?
Today, right now, if you've found a bug, and you've ascertained, once you've done the investigation and you've ascertained the users who are eligible for notification, my understanding is you have 72 hours.
It wasn't a
and
bug.
We both notify you.
They knew you were onto them.
in that time frame.
Okay, thank you.
And then they
Now,
made it a
according to media
bug.
reports, Google found evidence that Russian agents spent thousands of dollars to purchase ads on its advertising platforms that span multiple Google products as part of the Russian agents' campaign to interfere in the election 2 years ago. Additionally, Juniper Downs, head of global policy for YouTube, testified in July that YouTube had identified and shut down multiple channels containing thousands of videos associated with the Russian misinformation campaign. Does Google now
And then they
know
shut
to
down
what extent
me
to which its online platforms
for
were exploited
no
by
reason.
Russian actors in the election 2 years ago?
We have, we undertook a very thorough investigation, and in 2016, we now know that there were 2 main ad accounts linked to Russia, which advertised on Google for about $4,700 in advertising. We also found other limited.
Total of $4,700.
Oh bullshit.
That's right. Which was, no amount is okay here, but but we found limited activity, improper activity. We have learned a lot from that, and we've dramatically increased the protections we have around our election offerings. Leading up to the current elections, we again found limited activity, both from the Internet Research Agency in Russia, as well as accounts linked to Iran.
And what specific steps have you taken, including during the recent 2018 elections, to protect against further interference by Russia or other hostile foreign powers?
We have undertaken a significant review of how ads are bought. We look for the origin of these accounts. We share and collaborate with law enforcement, other technology companies, and we essentially are investing a lot of effort and oversight in this area.
looking ahead to the next Congress, I assume we can have your assurances that Google will work with this committee as we examine the issue of how to better secure our elections from future foreign interference?
Congressman, protecting our elections is foundational to our democracy, and you have my full commitment that we'll do that.
Okay, my last question, because time is running out. What are you doing, what is Google doing to combat the spread of white supremacy and right-wing extremism across YouTube?
Congressman, YouTube is an important platform. We do want to allow for diverse perspectives and opinions, but we have rules of the road. We have clear content policies, and we have policies against many categories, and we are transparent about these policies. And and when we find violations on our policies, we do remove those videos and handle content
When you find violations, you what?
of our policy. For example, we have policies against hate speech, and we clearly define them. And if we find any violations there, we do take down content.
When you take down the content, do you note who put it up so you can flag future content from the same sources?
We look at it on a video by video basis. To the extent there are repeat offenses from a same account, we do take into account and we notify the content creator, and we follow up accordingly.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Google has revolutionized the world, though not entirely in the way I expected. Americans deserve the facts objectively reported. The muting of conservative voices by internet platforms has intensified, especially during the presidency of Donald Trump. More than 90% of all internet searches take place on Google or its subsidiary, YouTube, and they are curating what we see. Google has long faced criticism for manipulating search results to censor conservatives. Conservative individuals and organizations have had their pro-Trump content tagged as hate speech or had their content reduced in search results. And enforcement of immigration laws has been tagged as hate speech as well. Such actions pose a grave threat to our democratic form of government. PJ Media found that 96% of search results for Trump were from liberal media outlets. In fact, not a single right-leaning site appeared on the first page of search results.
Are you fucking
This
kidding
doesn't
me?
happen by accident, but is baked into the algorithms. Those who write the
A
algorithms
Canadian
results
fucking
in this
propaganda
law,
channel owned by
apparently
Russia.
management
Told you so,
allows
huh?
it. Dr. Robert Epstein, a Harvard-trained psychologist, authored a study recently that showed Google's bias.
Bunch of dumbass
likely
shills said, so
swung
it must be true.
2.6 million votes to Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Google could well elect the next president with dire implications for our democracy. This should be a real concern to all but the most politically partisan. Those at the top set the tone. It will require a Herculean effort by the chief executive and senior management to change the political bias now programmed into the company's
Oh, but Hillary.
and Ms. Bajai, let me ask my first question about those examples of political bias that I just mentioned, and you're going to hear others too. In your opening statement, you mentioned your desire to provide information that was without political bias. Clearly, that's not working. So what are you going to improve that situation?
Congressman, thanks for the question.
How did that
If I
guy
may,
get so fucking dense?
Some of the studies you mentioned, we have investigated those. There are other studies which have looked at it. We have found issues with the methodology and the sample size and so on. But let me step back and say, providing users with high quality, accurate, and trusted information.
Look, he's
is
happy to
sacrosanct
answer
to
this
us.
guy. The other guys are
So
making
our
him nervous.
principles
He's
are
happy
that
for this
business
guy's
centers are
question.
natural long-term incentives
'Cause this
that
is the
align with
setup.
that. We want to serve users
This is
everywhere.
exactly what he was
We
hoping
need
to
earn
hear
their
when he
trust in
came.
doing so.
So what actions are you going to take to try
Yeah, and
to
whoever didn't want to hear that can go
political
fuck
bias in
themselves.
Some of those examples that I just gave.
That's
I mean,
the
they're
truth. I'm
irrefutable.
sorry you
So
can't handle it.
It occurs, you have to take some responsibility for that bias. What do you intend to do about it?
Or else you wouldn't know the
Congressman,
truth if I was stomping
with
the
respect,
fucking shit out of
Dr.
you.
Epstein's study, we have investigated. We don't agree with the
Ran a little
methodology.
trouble
Happy to
monitor.
follow up with your office and give our findings
Didn't want to hear it.
on that study. When we look at it, we evaluate our studies to evaluate our search results. Today we use a very robust methodology, and we've been doing this for 20 years. making sure the results are accurate is what we need to do well, and we work hard to do that.
What does methodology have to do with the fact that 96% of the references to Trump are from liberal media?
There are always studies, which can show one set of data and arrive at conclusions. But we have looked at results on our top news category. We find that we have a wide variety of sources, including sources from the left and sources from the right, and we are committed to making sure there's diverse perspectives.
By the way, the study that I referred to was done by a self-proclaimed Democrat who voted for Hillary Clinton and said he regretted to find what he found, but he felt it was irrefutable and no one has been able to disprove him. Let me go to another question.
Oh,
and that is,
bullshit.
clearly, there may be a difference of opinion as to the degree or amount of political bias. Would you...
You just didn't feel like naming him, did you?
...an entity to study your search results for political bias? I know you have individuals studying that now, but you appointed them. Would you allow third-party, independent, outside...
Does this
organizations
dumbass actually
to
think
study
he's a
search
Christian?
results and cooperate with them to determine
I doubt it.
the degree, or if any, of political bias?
Congressman, if I may make 2 points. One is, today there have been independent third-party studies looking at search results. The Economist did.
But you chose those third parties. I'm talking about someone truly independent.
We didn't choose those third parties. I mean, they completed those studies. The second is we are transparent as to how we evaluate search. We publish our rater guidelines. We publish it externally, and raters evaluate it, and that's how we are trying hard to understand what users want, and this is something important to us to get right. I'm happy to follow up and explain the methodology and the studies which have been done by independent third parties.
Okay. To my knowledge, again, you have picked those third.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Facility in downtown San Jose, and they didn't ask for any tax subsidies. In fact, they're purchasing the land and paying the city gobs of money. I'm going to be parochial and ask.
What the fuck is this
because I think
bullshit?
most people in San Jose are excited by the proposal, but there's anxiety about the impact on housing and whether Google intends to be a partner with the city of San Jose to make sure that we accommodate the housing that will be necessary for the 20,000 additional employees that are proposed in San Jose.
Sorry, I missed the last part of your question.
Whether you would be a partner with the city in helping to provide additional housing to accommodate these employees.
Congressman, it's an important question. We deeply care about the community where we work. As part of this effort, we have done wide outreach, and we have committed to making sure there is affordable housing at varying affordability
Very good.
levels as part of the development.
Thank you
We
so
are already
much.
in touch with the city leaders there.
Thank you so much. There's so many questions, and we're not going to be able to deal with them all today. I'm hoping in the next Congress, we will be able to visit with you and other tech companies to go through issues of privacy, data localization and its relationship to human rights, competition policies, the issue of takedown requests by authoritarian regimes, encryption policy, and what's going on in Australia, filtering and confirmation bias and its impact on society generally, both culturally and politically. But we can't do that in the 5 minutes we have here today. So I would just like to revisit some of the questions that have already been asked. The chairman asked about location policies in your Android system, and you pointed to various apps that might provide information. Let's say I got an Android phone, and unlike most people, I don't have a single app on that phone. What information would be collected?
Congressman, there is a device-specific location setting which you can turn on or off. And
Let's
if
say I
you
turn it off.
turn it off, there's no location information sent from that device.
Okay.
But this is a complex area. There are times, for example, your IP address may include some location information.
Correct.
it's an area we are committed to doing more to make it easier.
Now, manipulation of search results, I think it's important to talk about how search works. Right now, if you Google the word idiot under images, a picture of Donald Trump comes up. I just did that. How would that happen? How does search work so that that would occur?
We provide search today for any time you type in a
Because he's
keyword.
an idiot.
We, as Google, we've gone out and crawled and stored copies of billions of web pages in our index, and we take the keyword and match it against web pages and rank them based on over 200 signals. Things like relevance, freshness, popularity, how other people are using it, and based on that, at any given time, we try to rank and find the best results for that query. And then we evaluate them with external raters to make sure that, and they evaluate it to objective guidelines, and that's how we make sure the process is working.
So it's not some little man sitting behind the curtain.
Really?
Figuring out what we're going to show the user. It's basically a compilation of what users are generating and trying to sort through that information.
Last year we served over 3 trillion searches, and just as a fact, every single day, 15% of the searches Google sees, we have never seen them before. So, this is working at scale, and we don't manually intervene on any particular search result.
I would just like to note, from time to time, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle complain that they hear an individual engineer appears to be a Democrat. And I just like to put this in context. In Santa Clara County, Donald Trump in the 2016 election got 20% of the vote. That's how much of the vote he got. So it's not a surprise that the engineers who live in Santa Clara County would reflect that general political outcome. That has nothing to do with the algorithms and the really automated process that is the search engine that serves us. If we didn't have Google, we wouldn't be able to find any information in the efficient way that we do. I look forward next
no.
year to working with you on some of the very serious questions.
Are you
that
fucking
we
kidding
face.
me?
It's pretty obvious that bias against conservative voices is not one of them. Thank you very much. My time is expired, Mr.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shabbat, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
There were
Chairman.
search
Thank you,
engines
Mr. Chairman.
before Google.
Something real quickly. We've heard several times this morning the mention that 90% of the time that a person, he or she, does an internet search, that it's through Google. Would you basically agree that that's true?
More than ever, there are many ways users access information. Just to give an example, if you're trying to shop, if you're trying to buy something, more than 50% of product searches originate with Amazon in the US today. If you're looking for information on news, today you can get it from more sources than ever before.
Do you dispute then the 90% number?
Our internal, it's tough for us to assess the number. There are external studies which have shown different numbers, including lower numbers than that.
Okay. Now, you've heard the allegation this morning. I know you dispute it, but you've heard the allegation that there's a bias in favor of liberal or progressive points of view and against more conservative point of view. You've heard that this morning already. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm okay.
Let me tell you now about a first-hand experience that I've had. I do a weekly blog. I've been doing it for the better part of 9 years now. And a while back, Republicans in the House passed legislation to repeal and replace Obamacare. Our bill was called the American Health Care Act, or the AHCA. When I was writing my blog about that, I Googled American Health Care Act, and virtually every article was an attack on our bill. Article after article alleging that our bill would result in millions and millions of people losing the great care that they were supposedly getting under Obamacare.
Well, you probably
I would
wrote
argue
a
that was
shitty bill.
completely false. But it wasn't until you got to the third or fourth page of search results before you found anything remotely positive about our bill. Let me give you a second example. The Republican tax cut bill was passed about a year ago, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, same story. Article after article attacking the Republican tax cut plan, alleging the tax cuts only went to the rich when in actuality about 85% of taxpayers got their taxes cut, including millions and millions of middle class taxpayers. And once again, to find any article that had anything remotely good to say.
You just
about our
side-swapped
bill,
data.
Deep into the search results.
You fucking lying piece
I
of
know
shit.
Google's attitude, the algorithm made us do it. So that I buy that. How do you explain?
You went from amount of a substance to amount of people.
Part against conservative points
You're
of
just a
view,
liar.
Conservative policies. Is it just the algorithm, or is there more happening there?
Congressman, I understand the frustration at seeing negative news, and I see it on me, on Google. There are times you can search on Google, and page after page there's negative news which we reflect. But what is important here is we use a robust methodology to reflect what is being said about any given topic at any particular time. And we try to do it objectively using a set of rubrics. It is in our interest to make sure we reflect what's happening out there in the best objective manner possible. I can commit to you and I can assure you, we do it without regards to political ideology. Our algorithms have no notion of political sentiment.
Again, I'm going to run out of time here. I apologize for interrupting, but and I sincerely believe that you believe what you're saying here. But you've got almost 90,000 employees. Somebody out there is doing something that just isn't working if you're looking for unbiased results. And I've seen this firsthand. Time after time. I just mentioned two of the most obvious ones that people would remember. Yeah, those bills, heard about those. So I've seen it. If what I've described and some others, I'm sure you're going to hear other examples. If it is happening, do you see how conservatives believe that your company is kind of putting their thumb on this scale, so to speak, that you're in effect picking winners and losers in political discourse out there in America today, and therefore actually affecting elections. And do you see why conservatives would be concerned about this, and why we're asking these kinds of questions today? There's a lot of people that think what I'm saying here is happening, and I think it's happening. So I've only got about 20 seconds to go, but I'll give it to you.
Congressman, it's important.
They made it happen just so you could say that it was happening, because the exact opposite was happening for a long, long fucking time. And then they started getting investigated, so they started doing this. Just to piss you off, to get you to say this shit. Because you're helping them cover their own asses right now. It's a bigger picture than you can fucking understand,
Thank you
apparently.
for that. Go back.
What a bunch of morons.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Bachai. I'm right here. It's a pleasure to have you here this morning. I'm going to try and answer or offer to you questions initially that require just a yes or no answer, if you would. Does Google choose conservative voices over liberal voices?
We approach our work without any political bias. We build it in a neutral way.
Answer is no, or yes or no?
No.
If hate speech provokes violence, is that the definition, the other aspects that you consider that you would take it down? I know there are other aspects, but particularly encouraging violence. Does that get taken down?
In primary purpose of inciting violence is what we consider as hate speech, yes, Congressman.
And it would be taken down?
Yes, we would do that.
The fact that I report best practices when
Bye.